They were here long before humanity walked the sands. Some call them monsters, others shadows of death. Long before cities rose, before kings carved their empires into stone, the desert belonged to them. Ghouls, silent predators of the night, creatures of hunger that feast not just on flesh, but on fear itself. No fire could burn them. No blade could pierce the truth of their existence. They move where light dies, where wind sculpts the dunes into impossible shapes, and where the moon casts illusions that your mind cannot trust. In this special journey, we will trace their footprints across endless sands. First, we will enter the moonless nights where ghouls hunt alone. Then, we will uncover their hidden hierarchy, powers, and ancient cunning. Finally, we will confront the philosophical weight of their presence and the truths the desert has always whispered, but humans refuse to hear. This is the real story of the ghoul. Not myth, not legend, but the hidden, relentless terror of the Arabian sands. If you are ready to stare into the darkness that civilization has tried to ignore, subscribe to Esoteric Origins. New journeys into ancient horrors await, and the desert remembers everything. To understand the ghoul, you must first understand the scope of its dominion. These are not mindless beasts. They are sentient, calculating, and ancient beyond human reckoning. In the moonless dunes, they stalk alone. In forgotten oases, they gather in secret enclaves. And in the ruins of abandoned cities, their influence lingers, unseen but unmistakable. We will begin with the lone hunters, the lesser ghouls who skulk at the edge of human camps, testing courage and curiosity alike. Then, we will ascend to the apex predators of the desert, creatures that strike with intelligence, patience, and a cruelty that is indifferent to morality. Finally, we will explore their hidden world, the architecture of their existence, the laws they obey, the instincts that drive them. From whispers of pre-Islamic tribes to the chronicles of desert mystics, the ghoul's presence is woven into every shadow, every mirage, every restless gust of sand. By the end of this journey, you will see that the Arabian desert was never empty. It was never safe, and the ghouls never left. The word ghoul itself carries the weight of centuries. Derived from the Arabic al-ghul, it literally means to seize or to snatch. And seize they do, not merely possessions, but life, sanity, and the fragile boundary between the living and the dead. Early Arabian texts describe them as creatures born of the desert itself, spirits that emerge from the soil and shadows, shaped by hunger and time. Pre-Islamic poets whispered of ghouls stalking nomads at night, of caravans disappearing without a trace, leaving only the echo of empty tents flapping in the wind. Unlike the Western idea of monsters, which often assigns a fixed morality, ghouls operate according to an alien logic. Their goals are inscrutable. They are neither good nor evil. They are natural forces, as integral to the desert as the sun-scorched sand or the sudden mirage that lures the unwary into dunes that shift like liquid. By understanding the etymology, we see that ghoul was never just a name. It was a warning, a marker for those who traverse the barren lands. Their title itself is a testament to their predatory patience, their hunger, and the invisible threads that connect them to the rhythms of the Arabian desert. Not all ghouls are created equal. Like the dunes themselves, they have contours, peaks, and hidden depths, layers of danger and intelligence. To understand them, we must look beyond the stories of wandering nomads and into the structures of their world. At the bottom dwell the lesser ghouls, scavengers of corpses, opportunistic hunters, creatures that linger on the edges of human camps. They are quick, sly, and capable of mischief, but their power is limited. They rely on stealth, ambush, and the gullibility of the unwary. Above them rise the stalkers, a cunning class that actively hunts humans. These ghouls are patient, often trailing their prey for days, learning routines, studying weaknesses. They can mimic voices, create fleeting illusions in the heat of the desert, and vanish into shadows without a trace. Tribes that encountered them rarely survived, and if they did, the survivors spoke of voices calling them from the dunes, and eyes glinting in the darkness that seemed far too intelligent for a simple predator. Then there are the elders, ancient ghouls whose power stretches across centuries. Their minds are sharp, their cunning nearly divine. They manipulate weaker ghouls, orchestrating hunts with a sophistication that rivals human generals. Some Islamic and pre-Islamic texts describe elders watching from dunes like statues, unmoving for decades, before striking with devastating precision. And towering above all, the apex ghouls. Rare, almost mythical. These are creatures of incomprehensible hunger and patience, beings whose very presence warps reality, whose movements bend light and shadow, and whose intellect challenges the human mind. Lesser ghouls speak of them in whispers. Desert mystics avoid naming them altogether. When one appears, the desert itself seems to pause. Hierarchy in the ghoul world is more than power. It is survival, it is cunning, and it is alien intelligence. Each class obeys rules that are inscrutable to humans, yet perfectly coherent within their own dark logic. Understanding the layers of hierarchy is the first step toward comprehending the true danger that walks the Arabian sands at night. A ghoul does not attack in the way humans understand violence. It edits reality. Its first ability is distortion. Space around it bends subtly. Distances stretch or collapse without warning. A figure seen on the horizon may take hours to reach or arrive in seconds. Footsteps repeat where no one walks. Paths curve back into themselves. The desert no longer obeys geometry. Second comes mimicry. Ghouls do not merely change shape, they simulate familiarity. A lone traveler may hear a voice calling his name in a dialect he hasn't spoken since childhood. The voice carries emotion, exhaustion, relief. This is not illusion. It is psychological reconstruction, drawn from observation and patience. If you were that traveler, hearing a voice you recognize in the middle of nowhere, would you follow it or turn and flee? I'd love to know what you do. Share your instinct in the comments. Some ghouls manipulate hunger itself. Not just physical hunger, but existential need. They amplify thirst, despair, nostalgia. Victims have been recorded abandoning water to chase memories. Others willingly follow ghouls into the dunes, fully aware of the danger, unable to resist the pull. At higher tiers, ghouls exert territorial dominance. Entire regions become unstable. Sandstorms rise without wind. Heat fluctuates violently. Night arrives early. Stars shift position. Nomads reported constellations rotating slowly overhead, as if the sky itself were being turned. The rarest and most feared ghouls possess something far worse than brute force. They wait. They allow humans to survive encounters. On purpose. Survivors carry the imprint. Dreams change. Time perception fractures. Some never leave the desert, even after returning home. Their lives spiral quietly, as if a part of them is still being hunted. The ghoul does not need to kill you. It can finish you later. Ghouls do not think like predators. They think like systems. Their psychology is not driven by hunger alone, but by calibration. They observe how long a human hesitates, how often he looks back, whether he conserves water or panics early. Fear is not the trigger, it is the data. A ghoul may follow a traveler for days without revealing itself. It learns routines, sleep patterns, emotional breaking points. Some survivors recalled hearing footsteps that matched their own pace perfectly, stopping when they stopped, resuming only after they moved again. This is not mimicry. It is synchronization. Ghouls do not attack at moments of weakness. They wait for moments of certainty. When a human believes they understand what is happening, when they think they've escaped, found water, or recognized the threat, that is when the ghoul intervenes. Their logic is alien, but consistent. They respect preparation. They despise arrogance. Some desert traditions speak of travelers who passed through ghoul territory untouched, not because they were strong, but because they behaved correctly. Slow movements, limited speech, no displays of panic or confidence. There are recorded accounts of ghouls abandoning a hunt entirely once curiosity was satisfied. In these cases, the human was not spared out of mercy, but irrelevance. The ghoul had learned everything it needed. The most disturbing aspect of ghoul psychology is restraint. They do not need to kill. They are fully capable of letting humans destroy themselves through exhaustion, confusion, and misplaced hope. When they finally act, it is precise, not emotional, not rushed, and never accidental. Descriptions of ghouls vary, yet all share an impossibility that unsettles the mind. Witnesses speak of shapes that defy comprehension, bodies that seem too tall or too thin, eyes that flicker with a light from another world, limbs that bend and twist as if the laws of anatomy were optional. Some ghouls appear humanoid, at least at first glance. Their skin is pallid and translucent, veins glowing faintly like molten sand beneath the desert sun. Their eyes, if you can call them that, reflect not light but movement, as if containing the memory of every traveler they have ever hunted. Their mouths stretch wider than humanly possible, revealing teeth that shift in size and number, depending on their mood or need. Others are abstract, appearing as rippling shadows across dunes, forms that seem woven from wind, dust, and moonlight. Nomads report seeing geometrical patterns move unnaturally in the corner of their eyes, colors and shapes that burn briefly into memory, leaving the mind unsettled and the body frozen. Some claim that even a fleeting glance can induce nausea, vertigo, or terror too precise and surgical to be accidental. The apex ghouls transcend form altogether. Manuscripts describe them as bending the air around them, occupying more space than seems physically possible, their shapes hinted at only by distortions in light and shadow. One 10th century account tells of a ghoul that passed by a desert caravan, leaving footprints in a spiral pattern that stretched impossibly far, as if the ground itself had bowed to accommodate a being too vast for reality. Yet the most consistent feature across all descriptions is the sense of intelligence emanating from every movement. Every pause, every flicker of shadow, every ripple in sand carries meaning, and humans are rarely capable of deciphering it. The ghouls are not merely predators. They're sentient, alien, and profoundly aware of the smallest details of the world they inhabit. The desert is not empty. It is listening. Ghouls do not merely inhabit the Arabian wastelands. They are integrated into its logic. The dunes function like shifting architecture, walls rising, corridors collapsing, landmarks dissolving overnight. What appears to be chance is often deliberate rearrangement. Silence behaves strangely in ghoul territory. Sound does not echo correctly. Wind moves without cooling. Footsteps arrive half a second late, as if the ground itself is processing your presence before responding. Mirages are not errors of heat. They are interfaces. Water appears where none exists. Shadows detach from objects. Rock formations resemble figures only when viewed from the corner of the eye. The environment communicates indirectly, never revealing intent outright. At night, the desert breathes. Sand settles in waves. The air thickens. Smell changes first. Iron, dust, something faintly organic. Then pressure, a sensation like being watched from below the ground rather than above. Oases associated with ghouls feel wrong. Vegetation grows too evenly. Insects fall silent. Water reflects the sky inaccurately, stars appearing that do not exist. Animals refuse to drink. This is not camouflage. It is territorial signaling. The desert does not warn humans away. It tests them. Those who fail do not vanish immediately. They wander. They circle. They exhaust themselves trying to impose logic where none applies. By the time the ghoul reveals itself, if it ever does, the environment has already decided the outcome. If you were walking alone here, hearing the desert rearranging itself around you, would you notice the signs? Or keep walking, convinced it was just your imagination? Let me know what you do in the comments. The earliest encounters with ghouls were not recorded as legends. They were logged as incidents. Pre-Islamic caravan records describe entire trade routes being abandoned after repeated disappearances. These were not chaotic losses. Supplies were found intact, animals unharmed. Gone distributed. Only the people were gone. In some cases, their footprints led away from the tents in neat, deliberate lines, single file, vanishing into open desert. Later accounts describe something stranger. Survivors. One merchant from Najd was discovered days after his caravan vanished, wandering without injuries, water, or memory of the event. He spoke clearly, calmly. He insisted the journey had gone exactly as planned, until he was shown the empty horizon where his companions should have been. He never traveled again. He died years later, reportedly waking every night at the same hour, walking outside, and standing barefoot on the sand until dawn. As Islamic scholarship expanded, ghoul encounters were no longer dismissed as superstition. Jurists and theologians debated them seriously. Some argued ghouls were a subset of jinn. Others rejected this, noting their behavior lacked the emotional volatility typical of jinn encounters. Ghouls were colder, slower, more deliberate. The most consequential encounter appears in regional oral histories surrounding a desert sage whose name has been intentionally omitted from later texts. According to surviving fragments, this man attempted not to flee or confront a ghoul, but to observe it openly. He refused food and water offered through illusion. He spoke only when addressed. He did not follow when beckoned. The ghoul revealed itself, not fully, not physically, but enough to confirm presence. The sage returned alive and changed. He forbade travel through certain regions at specific times of year. He altered prayer schedules for desert caravans. He instituted rituals not of protection, but of behavioral correction. These practices spread rapidly, and the encounters stopped, not because the ghouls were banished, but because humans learned how not to be noticed. Not all encounters ended in oblivion. Some humans met the ghouls directly and survived, though forever changed. One 11th century account tells of a desert sage named Harith, who wandered alone for weeks, seeking knowledge of the unseen. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, he glimpsed a ghoul standing atop a dune, its form flickering between smoke, shadow, and something vaguely human. Harith did not run. He bowed slightly, acknowledging the presence without challenge. The ghoul studied him, tilting its head with a patience that felt eternal. For hours, they remained in that silent standoff, the desert humming softly beneath them. Harith noted every subtle shift, the way the sand swirled against the creature's legs, how its shadow bent in impossible ways, how the air itself seemed to thicken near it. Eventually, the ghoul moved closer, not with aggression but deliberate examination. It sniffed the wind, tasted the air with invisible senses, and then, in a gesture that could have been curiosity or dismissal, it circled Harith before vanishing over the ridge. The sage recorded everything. The sounds he could not hear, the shapes that seemed almost to flicker out of existence, the cold weight in the air that remained long after the creature departed. Another account comes from a 13th century caravan guard named Samir. During a night patrol, he glimpsed multiple ghouls moving across dunes, coordinated as if rehearsed in some alien logic. He raised his torch, and for a moment, their forms crystallized into towering silhouettes, eyes glinting with intelligence that chilled blood. Samir did not fire. He did not call for help. He simply observed, noting the pattern of their steps, the deliberate pauses, the micro-adjustments to the wind and terrain. By dawn, the ghouls had disappeared, leaving behind subtle disturbances. Sand shifted into impossible patterns, and small bones of desert creatures rearranged, as though mocking human attempts at understanding. These stories reveal the harsh truth. Ghouls respond not to fear or aggression, but to calculation and intent. Human survival often hinged on humility, observation, and patience. They taught that encounters were tests, not of strength, but of wisdom. One misstep, A glare, a sudden motion, even a thought unguarded, could trigger consequences measured not in seconds, but decades. In all cases, those who survived returned with knowledge and awe. The desert was no longer a place of mere survival. It became a living, sentient environment, a dialogue between human perception and alien intelligence. Harith's writings, Samir's memoirs, and countless anonymous accounts all converge on a single point. Understanding a ghoul, even partially, is not mastery. It is an encounter with a mind older, broader, and utterly indifferent to humanity. The ghouls teach lessons older than any city, older than any empire. Humanity often believes power is mastery, that understanding allows control. The desert whispers otherwise. Intelligence, patience, and observation can grant survival, but never dominance. A single misjudgment, an assumption about motivation, a failure to notice subtle movement, can erase centuries of human effort in a single moment. These stories ask questions that modern humans still struggle to answer. What do we do when confronted with intelligence that does not share our values? How do we navigate forces that perceive time, space, and consequence on scales we cannot grasp? The ghouls remind us that survival is not about conquest. It is about perception, humility, and adaptation. Yet there is a paradox. Humanity's attempts to dominate the desert, to name, categorize, and control its hidden intelligence, reveal as much about us as about the ghouls. Every failed encounter, every vanished caravan, every story of survival demonstrates the limits of human pride. The desert does not merely punish, it teaches. It forces reflection on the fragility of knowledge, the arrogance of mastery, and the narrowness of our understanding. Contemporary readers can see the lesson in broader terms. Artificial intelligence, unexplored natural phenomena, or alien life. These modern mysteries mirror the ancient desert. Like the ghouls, they operate on scales and logics that are alien to us. We may map, measure, and simulate, but understanding does not equal control. Wisdom, the desert insists, is found not in domination, but in respectful observation, patience, and acknowledgement of the incomprehensible. The philosophical weight of these encounters cannot be overstated. The ghouls are not evil, they are indifferent. They do not punish out of malice, nor reward out of kindness. They operate according to an alien logic that humans only glimpse. Our triumphs and failures are tiny ripples in a vast intelligence that predates civilization and will outlast it. And yet, these stories endure because they offer more than terror. They offer insight. A glimpse into how intelligence can exist beyond human values. How patience and calculation can replace force. How the world remains far larger than our imagination. Ghouls have left their mark not only in fear, but in culture, philosophy, and literature. From the earliest oral tales whispered around desert fires to the illuminated manuscripts of medieval scholars, they appear as more than monsters. They are symbols of the unseen forces shaping human destiny. Poets of pre-Islamic Arabia invoked their presence to describe danger, temptation, and the fine line between life and death. A single misstep in a metaphorical desert could summon the horror of their intellect and patience onto human imagination. Sufi mystics used the ghoul as a mirror for spiritual insight. They wrote of encountering the desert not as a passive space, but as a sentient environment, populated with intelligences that challenge humility, awareness, and patience. Stories of silent companionship, of observation rather than confrontation, became metaphors for mastering one's own ego and understanding the hidden patterns of creation. Legal scholars and theologians debated the implications. Were humans obliged to respect such beings? Could one even interact with them without incurring cosmic consequence? The ghouls blurred lines between the natural and supernatural, forcing Islamic civilization to develop frameworks for understanding entities that did not fit neatly into human morality. Some texts even discuss the rare possibility of a ghoul following a path of divine recognition, further complicating the boundary between human and alien logic. In folklore, ghouls appear across regions and centuries. The deserts of Arabia, the mountains of Persia, the oases of North Africa. Their forms shift, but their essence remains consistent. Ancient, sentient, incomprehensible. This consistency suggests either a deep cultural cohesion or repeated encounters with a real, enduring intelligence that transcended human perception. Western adaptations, once the stories traveled, softened their horror. The ghouls became monstrous caricatures in Gothic novels and early horror cinema. Menacing, yes, but stripped of the patient, calculating intelligence that defines their true nature. Yet scholars and historians recognize the original narratives for what they are: precise, methodical accounts of encounters with a mind alien to humanity. Each story preserves layers of philosophy, ontology, and survival. The ghoul is no mere cautionary tale. It is a lens through which civilizations understood the limitations of human perception and the broader architecture of the unseen world. Their influence endures in modern literature, occult studies, and cultural imagination, a bridge between fear, knowledge, and respect for forces older than humanity. The desert stretches endlessly, pale and indifferent, a horizon that swallows footsteps and whispers secrets older than memory. Somewhere beneath the dunes, in the still shadows between mirage and reality, the ghouls endure. They are patient. They are watching. They are timeless. A lone traveler might feel the weight of unseen eyes, the subtle tremor of sand shifting where no wind blows, or the faint echo of movement just beyond perception. These are not tricks of imagination. They are reminders that intelligence and power exist outside human comprehension, that some forces are not malevolent. They are simply indifferent to human existence. The symbolism is perfect. Humanity believes it masters its surroundings, commands its world, bends nature to will. Yet the desert, and the ghouls that inhabit it, demonstrates the illusion of control. Each footprint is temporary. Each fire burns only briefly. And each plan, no matter how meticulous, exists under the shadow of incomprehensible intelligence. The ancient storytellers understood this. They encoded warnings, philosophy, and awe into every tale. Today, we inherit those stories, not merely as entertainment, but as mirrors. A mirror reflecting our limitations, our fragility, and our responsibility to approach the unknown with respect rather than arrogance. Next time you walk across a barren landscape, stare into a dark alley, or contemplate forces beyond comprehension, remember the ghouls. Not as monsters to conquer, not as myths to dismiss, but as ancient, intelligent presences that persist quietly in the hidden layers of reality. They are the measure of true patience, of alien intelligence, and of the universe's indifference to human ambition. The desert waits, and so do they. Subscribe.